I'm Amanda. I'm 32, and I thought I was marrying the love of my life until his family sat me down at their dining table, slid a prenup across, and said, "Sign it or the wedding's off." The silence from the man I loved cut deeper than their words. But they had no idea I was hiding a $9 million secret of my own. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more family drama and emotional courage stories. I remember the moment as vividly as if it happened yesterday. His mother's dining room smelled of roasted chicken and cinnamon candles, the kind of warmth that usually means family. But that evening, the air was cold, almost staged, like everyone already knew their lines except me. I sat at the long oak table, my hands wrapped around a glass of iced tea that had long since lost its chill. His father leaned back in his chair, clearing his throat in a way that demanded attention. My fiancé, Mark, sat beside me, stiff, his hands folded, his gaze locked on the tablecloth like the pattern might reveal the meaning of life. Then his mother pushed a stack of papers toward me. The sharp shuffle of the folder on the wood echoed louder than any voice in that room. "Sign it," she said. Her tone was firm but polite, the way someone might tell you to wipe your shoes before stepping into their house. "Or the wedding's off." For a second, I thought I misheard. The room seemed to tilt. My ears buzzed, and I blinked at the document like it might vanish if I waited long enough. What is this?" My voice barely left my throat. His mother folded her manicured hands, her pearl bracelet clinking lightly. "It's a prenup. Standard. Just to protect our son and the family business. Nothing personal. Amanda, we need to make sure our assets are safe." Nothing personal. The words pierced me more than if she'd spat an insult. Across the table, Mark remained silent. He didn't move, didn't touch my hand, didn't even look at me. I glanced at him, begging with my eyes for him to say something, anything that might make this make sense. He swallowed but stayed quiet. My stomach tightened. I forced myself to glance at the first page. Legal terms blurred together, but the bold sentence at the top was clear. In the event of separation or divorce, Amanda will forfeit any claim to property, finances, or business equity. It felt like a slap. "You're asking me to sign away everything," I whispered. His father leaned forward, his voice calm, almost rehearsed. "Amanda, it's just business. You'll still have Mark and love and all that matters. But marriage is a legal partnership, and this keeps everything clean." I wanted to laugh. Clean? No, this was messy. This was trust being shredded in front of my eyes. I looked at Mark again. Desperate. "Do you agree with this?" He shifted, rubbing the back of his neck. "Amanda, it's not a big deal. Just something to ease everyone's minds. Let's not make it into more than it is." My heart sank. The man I loved, the man who promised me forever, couldn't even defend me against his parents' test of loyalty. I set the paper down, my fingers trembling. Inside, rage and humiliation tangled together, but I didn't let either spill. Instead, I smiled, a small, tight smile that no one expected. "I'll need time to think," I said. The table went quiet. His mother raised an eyebrow, clearly not satisfied with hesitation. His father gave a slight nod, as if to say we've planted the seed. "It'll grow." Mark finally exhaled, like a weight had been lifted just because I didn't storm out. But little did they know, I wasn't the type to storm out. I was the type to observe, to memorize every detail, and to build my response brick by brick. When dinner ended, I excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door and leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes glossy. The woman in the mirror didn't look like a bride-to-be. She looked like someone cornered. I thought about the sacrifices I'd made for Mark. Moving states, leaving my job in Chicago, spending weekends cooking, and cleaning while he worked late hours at the family business. I gave and gave and gave because that's what love meant to me. And yet, here I was being treated like a gold digger, like a threat, like someone they needed to protect themselves from. My hands gripped the sink until my knuckles whitened. I wanted to scream, but instead, I whispered to myself, "Stay calm. Don't give them the satisfaction." When I walked back to the table, I forced a smile. His mother gave me a look that said she thought she'd won. His father chatted about sports, pretending the tension wasn't hanging over us like a storm cloud. Mark held my hand under the table. Finally, but it was limp, half-hearted, like he was checking a box rather than giving comfort. I played along. I ate dessert. I laughed at his father's joke. I kissed his cheek before we left, all while the fire inside me grew. On the drive home, silence filled the car. The headlights stretched across the dark road, and every passing mile felt heavier. Finally, I spoke. "Why didn't you say anything, Mark?" His hands tightened on the steering wheel. What was I supposed to say? "It's just a prenup, Amanda. Everyone does it." "Not everyone," I shot back. "And not like that. Not with threats." He sighed. "It's just how my parents are. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally." The second time that phrase stabbed me in one night, I turned my face to the window, watching the blur of streetlights. I wanted to scream, to demand he stand up for me, but instead, I went silent, because silence, I realized, could be sharper than words. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, my chest heavy with betrayal. I didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. Instead, I thought. I planned. I remembered the papers I'd tucked away years ago in a safe deposit box, the will from my uncle, the inheritance no one knew about. $9 million. My secret. My shield. And in that moment, I decided they would not see me break. They would see me walk away. But not yet. Not until they believed I was theirs to control. The ceiling above me felt endless that night, a blank canvas where my thoughts painted themselves in frantic strokes. Every time I blinked, the echo of his mother's voice replayed. "Sign it, or the wedding's off." The words weren't just an ultimatum. They were a cage, and I felt trapped inside it. Mark's slow breathing beside me didn't comfort me. If anything, it stung. How could he sleep so easily while my chest burned with questions? I turned on my side, staring at his silhouette. His arm dangled off the bed, relaxed, like nothing had shifted in his world. But mine had. I pulled the blanket closer, though I wasn't cold. My doubts pressed against me, heavier than the covers. Was I about to marry a man who valued silence more than loyalty? Or worse, a man who would always let others speak for him? The red glow of the alarm clock read 2:43 a.m. Sleep wasn't coming. I slipped out of bed carefully, not wanting to wake him, and padded barefoot into the kitchen. The tile was cool against my feet. I poured a glass of water, but when I brought it to my lips, my hands trembled so much the water spilled onto the counter. I pressed the glass down and leaned on the sink, my reflection faint in the window above it. My eyes looked hollow, restless. In the silence of that kitchen, I let my thoughts roam. Maybe they were right. Maybe I wasn't enough for him. Maybe without the safety net of a prenup, his family would always see me as a risk. That doubt burrowed deep, and I hated how much it stung. But then another thought crept in. If Mark truly loved me, if his promises meant anything, shouldn't he have stood up? Shouldn't love mean partnership, not paperwork? I sank into a chair at the small kitchen table and wrapped my arms around myself. My body swayed, slightly, like I was trying to rock away the ache in my chest. The doubts weren't just about the prenup, they were about everything. Every unanswered text, when he was busy, Every dinner I ate alone. Every time he said, "That's just how my parents are." I buried my face in my hands, but tears still wouldn't come. Anger had dried them up. By morning, the world outside looked deceptively ordinary. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, and the birds chirped like nothing had shattered the night before. Mark shuffled into the kitchen, his hair messy, his t-shirt wrinkled. He gave me a tired smile. "Morning." I forced one back. "Morning." He poured himself coffee, humming under his breath. How could he act so normal? My chest tightened. Maybe I was the only one losing sleep over this. "Did you think about what we talked about last night?" I asked, my voice steady though my heart pounded. He paused mid-pour, then set the pot back. "Amanda, I told you, it's not worth stressing over. My parents just want to feel secure. It doesn't change how I feel about you." I wanted to believe him, but doubt clawed at me. "Then why didn't you say anything when they gave me the ultimatum?" He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Because arguing with them wouldn't help. You know how they are." It was easier to stay quiet. Easier. That word twisted in my stomach. Easier for him maybe, but not for me. I didn't reply. Instead, I grabbed my jacket and muttered, "I need some air." The cool morning breeze hit my face as I stepped outside. I walked aimlessly through the neighborhood, past trimmed lawns and kids waiting for the school bus. Ordinary life surrounded me, but inside, I felt anything but ordinary. Each step deep in the doubts. Could I marry into a family that saw me as a liability? Could I trust a man who let their voices drown out mine? I stopped at a small park nearby, sitting on a bench under a maple tree. The leaves rustled gently above me. I watched an older couple walk by, holding hands and laughing at something only they understood. That image cut me. Wasn't that what I wanted? A love where no one else's approval mattered. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos. Mark and I at the beach, smiling. Mark and I at a barbecue, his arms slung around me. The smiles were real then, or at least I thought they were. Now, every photo felt like a question mark. Later that day, I went to my friend Rachel's house. She was the one person I trusted enough to share my feelings with. Her kitchen smelled like fresh coffee, and the radio played softly in the background as we sat at her table. I told her everything, the prenup, the silence, the ultimatum. She listened without interrupting, her eyes steady on me. When I finished, she leaned back. "Amanda, that's not love. That's control. If Mark won't stand up for you now, when will he?" Her words hit hard, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. "But I love him," I whispered. My voice cracked on the word. Rachel reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Loving him doesn't mean losing yourself. Don't confuse the two." Her grip grounded me, pulling me back from the spiral of doubts. Still, my chest ached. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this, like a test I was doomed to fail. That night, back at home, Mark tried to cuddle up to me on the couch as if nothing was wrong. I let him, but inside, I felt miles away. The doubts kept gnawing. They followed me into the shower, into bed, into my dreams. In one, I stood at the altar, about to say I do, when his mother stepped between us, holding up the prenup like a veil. I woke gasping, my heart racing. I pressed my palms to my face in the darkness, whispering to myself, "What am I doing? What am I walking into?" The days that followed blurred together. Every interaction with Mark felt tinged with doubt. When he kissed me, I wondered if his parents' approval meant more. When he talked about the future, I wondered if I was even part of it or just a placeholder until the contract was signed. And yet, I stayed quiet. I smiled. I nodded. Outwardly, I played the role of the bride-to-be. But inside, My doubts grew louder, sharper, because deep down, I already knew this wasn't just about a prenup. It was about trust. And trust, once cracked, doesn't heal overnight. I didn't sleep much after that long night of doubts. My mind kept spinning, chasing answers I couldn't quite catch. By the time the first light of morning spilled into the room, I was already up, pacing barefoot on the wooden floor. Something inside me whispered that I needed to act before his family boxed me into a corner I couldn't escape. I made myself some coffee, but it sat untouched on the counter, growing cold as my nerves pulled me toward the study. Daniel had always been careless with paperwork. He'd toss bills and contracts into drawers, never remembering what was where. Maybe that carelessness would work in my favor now. I opened the first drawer of his old oak desk and found the usual receipts, manuals for electronics we didn't even own anymore, envelopes that had never been opened. But as I pulled at the second drawer, it stuck halfway, almost as if something inside was blocking it. My pulse quickened. I tugged harder, and it jerked open suddenly, sending a small stack of folders sliding onto the floor. Among them was one plain brown envelope, thicker than the rest. My name wasn't on it, but my gut told me it wasn't ordinary. I slid it open and pulled out a sheaf of papers. My breath caught. Bank statements. Not from our joint account, but from one I had never seen before. And the numbers, my hand trembled. $9 million. I blinked, convinced I'd read it wrong. I rubbed my eyes, rechecked the figures, flipped through page after page. It wasn't a typo. Daniel had a fortune tucked away, hidden in an account I knew nothing about. I sat down hard on the desk chair. The papers spread across my lap. My first thought was disbelief. Daniel wasn't from money. At least, that's what I had always been told. He worked in finance, yes, but we'd lived comfortably, not extravagantly. Our house was nice, but not palatial. Our cars practical, our vacations modest. So where had this money come from? Memories began to stitch themselves together. The hushed phone calls that ended when I walked into the room. The excuses about late meetings. The sudden bursts of irritation whenever I asked too many questions about his job. My stomach turned, but alongside the shock, something else crept in: relief. His family's pressure, their demands, their smug confidence, all of it suddenly looked different. They thought they held all the cards. They thought I was the outsider, the gold digger, the one who should be grateful to marry into their prestigious family. Yet here I was, staring at proof that Daniel had hidden millions. And if he had kept this from them, maybe it wasn't just me he didn't trust. I carefully slid the papers back into the envelope, but my mind raced with 100 scenarios. Did his family know? Was this money clean? Was it even all his? Just then, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart lurched. I shoved the envelope back into the drawer and pushed it shut just as Daniel walked into the study, still half asleep, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice rough from sleep. I forced a smile, hoping he couldn't hear how fast my heart was pounding. "Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd look for that tax file you said we misplaced." He yawned, nodded lazily, and walked past me toward the kitchen. My chest loosened, but not by much. That envelope sat just a few feet away, burning in the drawer like a live wire. That entire day, I moved through the house in a fog, replaying everything I'd seen. My life with Daniel suddenly felt like a puzzle I had been solving with half the pieces missing. Every casual remark, every vague answer, every locked briefcase. What if they were all connected to this hidden fortune? By evening, my curiosity was unbearable. When Daniel stepped out to take a call on the porch, I slipped back into the study, pulled the envelope out again, and looked deeper. At the very back was a letter, folded neatly, yellowed at the edges. It was from his late uncle. My eyes darted across the words. Investments, Inheritance, discretion. My throat went dry. Daniel hadn't earned this money. It had been left to him years ago. And the condition was clear. He was to keep it separate from the family, never to let them control it. I sank back into the chair, stunned. Suddenly, it made sense, his family's obsession with the prenup, their sharp eyes watching me, their eagerness to corner me before the wedding. They must have suspected. Maybe they didn't know the full amount, but they knew enough to want me out of the way. I folded the letter back, carefully, my hands shaking. This wasn't just about love anymore. This was about power, loyalty, and secrets so deep they had shaped our entire relationship. That night, when Daniel finally came to bed, I couldn't stop studying his face in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. Did he know that I knew? Was he hiding more? Or was he as much a prisoner of his family's expectations as I was? He reached for my hand, gave it a gentle squeeze, and whispered, "You've been quiet today." I swallowed hard, just thinking. He kissed my forehead, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. But as he drifted off to sleep, my mind was wide awake, racing with questions I wasn't ready to ask out loud. Because one truth had become impossible to ignore. The fortune wasn't just hidden. It was a weapon, and sooner or later, someone was going to use it. I lay there in the dark, listening to Daniel's steady breathing beside me, while my own chest tightened with a mix of fear and clarity. The truth was pressing against my ribs so fiercely, I felt it might spill out if I didn't make a decision soon. The wedding was only days away. Yet all I could think of was the fortune tucked away in that hidden account, the prenup his family shoved at me, and the gnawing certainty that I couldn't go through with vows built on lies. The morning of the rehearsal, the house buzzed with relatives, flowers, and endless chatter. Everyone pretended things were normal, but I could feel the tension wrapped around me like a rope tightening with every hour. Daniel's mother, sharp-eyed and unyielding, hovered near me like a hawk. "You've read over the prenup, I trust," she said, her voice sweet enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. I managed a smile. "Yes, I've read it." Her lips curved in victory, as though she'd won a silent battle. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know that her son had a secret fortune, and that I had stumbled upon the very thing they were so desperate to shield. Later that evening, as guests filtered into the banquet hall for the rehearsal dinner, I caught Daniel's eye across the room. He looked happy, relieved, even clinking glasses with his cousins, laughing in that easy way that had first charmed me. A part of me wanted to believe everything could still work. But then his sister leaned in to whisper something, and Daniel's smile faltered for just a moment before he caught himself. That tiny crack was enough to remind me. There were shadows in this family I would never be allowed to outrun. During dinner, Daniel reached for my hand under the table. His touch was warm, steady, almost pleading. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded, but inside, my heart was breaking. I wanted to tell him what I'd found, to ask why he'd hidden millions, to demand why I was expected to sign away my rights while his family circled me like wolves. But the words wouldn't come. Not there. Not with his entire family watching me like a performer on their stage. The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I stood by the window in my silk robe, staring at the faint glow of the city lights beyond. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, eyes hollow, mouth set in a line of dread. This wasn't how I'd imagined my wedding eve. Where was the joy, the excitement, the anticipation of a future built with love? All I felt was the crushing weight of betrayal and silence. At dawn, my maid of honor, Emily, arrived with coffee and a smile. She had been my best friend since college, the kind of friend who could see through every mask I wore. One look at me, and her smile faded. "Mandy," she said softly, using the nickname only she dared. "Talk to me. What's going on?" I hesitated, my throat thick with unshed tears. I don't think I can do this, I whispered. Her eyes widened. The wedding. I nodded. And once I started, the words tumbled out about the prenup, the hidden account, the pressure from his family, the walls closing in on me. Emily listened, her hand wrapped tightly around mine. Amanda, she said firmly, if you have even a shred of doubt this big, you cannot walk down that aisle. Don't marry someone out of fear or to keep up appearances. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. Her words hit me like a wave, crashing against the fragile dam I had been building inside. By the time she left the room, I knew the truth. The wedding couldn't happen. The hours leading up to the ceremony blurred into chaos. Makeup artists dabbed at my face, hairdressers tugged and pinned, bridesmaids fluttered in and out with dresses and jewelry. Everyone spoke of perfection. How beautiful the day would be. How stunning I looked. How lucky I was. None of them saw the storm raging behind my calm smile. When the music began and guests filled the chapel, my stomach clenched so tight, I thought I might collapse. My father appeared at the door, beaming with pride, his arm extended for me to take. He didn't know. He couldn't know. And I couldn't shatter his joy just yet. I took one step down the aisle, then another. The crowd turned, faces glowing with expectation. Daniel stood at the altar, his eyes locked on mine, full of love and something else, maybe hope, maybe fear. My chest tightened. Halfway down, I stopped. The music faltered. The whispers began. My father tugged gently at my arm. Mandy, he asked in confusion. Tears blurred my vision, but my voice was clear. I can't, I whispered, and then louder for everyone to hear, I can't do this. Gasps echoed through the chapel. Daniel's face went pale, his smile collapsing into disbelief. His mother shot to her feet, fury burning in her eyes. I turned, clutching the front of my gown, and hurried back down the aisle, past the stunned guests, past the cameras, past the carefully arranged flowers and promises. My heart pounded, my heels clicking against the marble like a drumbeat of freedom and fear. Outside, the cool air hit my skin like a slap. Emily was already there, waiting, her car running at the curb. Without a word, she opened the door, and I climbed in, my dress spilling across the seat. As we pulled away, I looked back at the church, at the life I was leaving behind. My chest ached with grief, but beneath it, a strange calm began to spread. I had chosen truth over illusion, freedom over chains. The wedding never happened, and in that moment, I realized it was the bravest decision I had ever made. The hum of Emily's car was the only sound as the church disappeared behind us. My chest still heaved from running, and the lace of my dress scratched at my skin. Every breath felt like both relief and grief rolled into one. I hadn't just left a wedding. I'd left an entire life that had been planned for me. Emily kept glancing at me from the driver's seat. You sure you're okay? I let out a shaky laugh, more disbelief than humor. I don't know if I'm okay, but I know I'm free. The words lingered in the air, and for the first time in weeks, I believed them. We drove straight to Emily's apartment. She tossed me a sweatshirt and leggings, and I peeled off the gown that had felt like armor and shackles all at once. Standing there in her small bathroom, I stared at my reflection. My hair was still pinned in curls, but my face looked raw, stripped of the perfect bride I was supposed to be. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and logged into the account my uncle had left me. The numbers glowed back at me, steady and undeniable. $9 million. Money I had guarded in silence, afraid to let anyone know, afraid it would taint every relationship I had. But now it was my weapon, my shield, my freedom. The first move I made was practical. I called a realtor the next morning. Within days, I toured a cozy house on the edge of town. White siding, a small porch swing, a backyard with an overgrown garden that needed love. It wasn't a mansion, but it felt like possibility. I paid in cash, the realtor's eyes widening in surprise. A week later, I posted a single photo online. Me standing barefoot in that backyard, holding the new keys in my hand, my smile quiet but unshakable. The caption was simple: a new chapter begins. The picture spread faster than I expected. Old friends commented, strangers shared it, and inevitably, it reached Daniel's family. I didn't need to say anything more. The image spoke louder than any confrontation ever could. The girl they thought was chasing their money had just bought a house outright. Without them. Without him. Daniel showed up at Emily's apartment 3 days later. I wasn't surprised. He'd always hated losing. "Amanda," he said the moment I opened the door, his voice frayed. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, letting him in. He looked different, tired, almost broken. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted, pacing the small living room. "You humiliated me. You humiliated my family." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Your family humiliated me first, Daniel. Do you remember the prenup? Do you remember standing there in silence while they treated me like a thief?" He flinched, but didn't answer. "And then I find out you've been hiding millions from me." I continued, my voice rising despite myself. "Did you ever plan to tell me? Or was I just supposed to marry you blind?" His jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that. I was protecting what's mine." I shook my head. "That's the difference between us, Daniel. I wanted a life built together. You wanted walls." Silence stretched between us. Finally, he whispered, "So that's it? You're done." I met his eyes, steady this time. "I was done the moment you chose silence over me." He left without another word, the sound of the door clicking shut behind him like the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. From that day on, I stopped looking back. I poured myself into building a life that was mine alone. I renovated the house, painting walls, planting flowers, and turning the neglected garden into a place of color and growth. Every nail hammered, every seed planted felt like stitching myself back together. Neighbors waved as I worked, and slowly I made friends. There was Mrs. Green, the retired teacher next door who brought me fresh pies, and the Johnsons across the street who invited me to their barbecue and treated me like family without knowing my past. In those small, ordinary moments, I felt a healing I hadn't known I needed. Quiet revenge doesn't always look like shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it looks like thriving where others expected you to crumble. It looks like laughter echoing off your porch when friends visit. It looks like financial independence used not for spite, but for peace. Of course, word traveled. I'd hear whispers, people saying Daniel's family was still fuming, that they couldn't understand how I'd walked away and landed on my feet so gracefully. Some even claimed his mother had tried to spin the story, painting me as unstable. But the truth had already spoken louder. I wasn't broken. I wasn't begging. I was flourishing. One evening, months later, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, Daniel's. I hesitated before opening it, but curiosity won. Inside was a single page. "Amanda, I thought I understood power. I thought money was everything. But I see now that you had something I never did, courage. You didn't just walk away. You rose above. I hope one day I can learn from that. D." I sat with the letter in my lap, tears pricking my eyes. Not because I wanted him back. I didn't, but because it was the first time he had acknowledged the truth. I folded it and placed it in a drawer, not as a keepsake of love, but as a reminder. I chose myself, And that choice had set me free. Today, when I sit on my porch swing, coffee in hand, the sun warming my face, I think about the girl who once stood frozen in a church aisle, terrified of disappointing everyone but herself. I barely recognize her now. My revenge was never about destroying Daniel or proving his family wrong. It was about showing myself that I could survive, even thrive, without their approval. The 9 million gave me choices, but my strength gave me freedom. And in that quiet, ordinary life I've built, my laughter rings louder than any of their demands ever did. In the end, I realized revenge didn't need to be loud, cruel, or destructive. It could be as simple as choosing peace over chaos and dignity over desperation. Walking away was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the bravest. My quiet freedom became my loudest victory. And if there's one lesson I carry with me, it's this. Sometimes the best way to win isn't by fighting back, but by building a life so full, so steady, that their absence doesn't matter anymore.